There's nothing scarier than finding yourself in a room with Darth Vader. Part of that's due to how he can just force choke you or regularly choke you to death at any point, but also from his horrifying past that led him to this point. So turn down the lights, grab a snack, and let's dive into every secret about this Sith, from secret lovers among the Imperial ranks to even behind the scenes details like what Darth Vader's real voice sounded like on set.
Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
First up, we have the time Vader started a Tusken Raider religion after killing a tribe of them. So weeks after the Battle of Yavin, Darth Vader had a talk with the Emperor at the Imperial Palace on Coruscant about his recent failure. Palpatine was mad at him for not only the loss of the Death Star, but also Weapons Factory Alpha, which was an Imperial facility that manufactured weapons on the moon of Kaimune 1 with the use of slavery under the Overseer Agadine. Palpatine placed much of the blame on Vader, however, even—
I will make it right. I will crush the rebels.
No, I think not. Then he would make Cassio Tag into the Grand General of the Empire, who according to the Dark Lord would be commanding Vader for some time, which is something Vader wouldn't like, as I'm pretty sure he hates this guy, because isn't that like the general that was on the Death Star in the conference room where most people are like, he's the only competent one there? Pretty sure it's that guy, and I think Vader ends up killing him anyway, so yay, justice for Vader, right? As Palpatine dismissed Vader, he chose not to tell his master about Obi-Wan's disappearance of the Force sensitivity of Red 5, and then Vader went to Tatooine, where he goes to Jabba's palace and then has negotiations with him, where he earns Jabba's respect by force choking him and fighting off all his goons. Then Jabba agrees to send his two best bounty hunters to work for him, which unfortunately doesn't include the Blue Bounty Hunter, but I wouldn't work for Jabba anyway, you know. Totally didn't do that in the Clone Wars.
Keep being at your service. I'll take on any job for the right price.
But after this meeting with the slug-like crime lord, Vader would actually seek out a Tusken Raider tribe and would then brutally kill them all. Not too different from what we see from Anakin in Attack of the Clones. Unless, of course, we could consider this a fragment of Vader coming up in his early life, but yeah, it's basically just Anakin, so yeah. But actually in Vader 25 of this 2015 run, and something you should know before we continue any further, is that there are 3 canon Vader comic runs, which we will be looking at today. One started in 2015 and takes place in between episode 4 and 5. Once this one ended, the run from 2017 started, which takes place right after Revenge of the Sith. And lastly, in 2020, we got a 3rd run starting up, which is in between episode 5 and 6. But this run, that being the 2015 one, starts with, in Vader number 1, him killing this Tusken tribe, and then in the 25th, or last issue, in an epilogue of sorts called Coda, we see a lone survivor of this ordeal who, following the decimation of his village, was discovered by another clan, and then the shaman had him bound to an effigy of Vader, which was set ablaze in a Wicker Man style statue. Also in here, we see a really cool vision from the shaman, which is his take on how Darth Vader destroyed the dead clan, which shows him turning the sun into a blade of fire to wield himself, which he then scatters the bodies of the Tuskens, who scatter before him like little bugs as he takes their lives from them. So it's kind of cool to see this representation of how the Tuskens would view things, and I don't know if they're supposed to be kind of less sentient or less intelligent, but they have more of a tribal view of things. But I mean, not even necessarily less intelligence, because you think about, I don't know, the Native Americans versus the colonists would have 2 vastly different ways of viewing things, and that doesn't make them less intelligent, it just means that they have a different way that they grew up and that kind of thing. So that's why they think a different way. It's also notable that the sacrifice of the lone survivor is against his will, which seems pretty on par for what the Tuskens tend to do. And it's also notable that Vader kills not only the men,
but the women. And the children, too.
So yeah, I thought this was a pretty cool little thing here, how he fights off all these Tusken Raiders and stuff, and it ties into Attack of the Clones too, so it has that going for it. I don't know if we get too much of an explanation or exploration of how he actually kills them, but we definitely get a big exploration of the Tuskens and their reaction to it. And I kind of love it when Star Wars and like Legends or canon comics kind of go weird and wacky like this and explore something we would not have seen otherwise. It's just a very unique thing that I'm glad I decide to put into this video. Next thing I wanted to go over is how Vader originally in these comics discovered that the farm boy over Yavin 4 has the last name of Skywalker. And you'll never believe who it is that tells him this, but actually Boba Fett of all people. Basically from earlier when I told you about Jabba giving Vader his 2 finest, this rendered to black chrysanthemum. This rendered to Black Chrysanthemum and Boba Fett, and Darth Vader gave Boba the assignment of tracking down a Rebel Alliance pilot close to Ben Kenobi to bring to Vader. Fett would fight with Luke at Old Ben's hut, where Skywalker was to chase off some Tusken Raiders who were ransacking it, and he failed to capture Luke but did acquire his name. Then he came to Vader and Boba told him he got away, but also told him of his name, that being Skywalker. Then Vader flashes back to Padme telling him she's pregnant, Palpatine telling Vader Padme is dead, killed in his anger, and also her funeral and the face of the Skywalker boy. When he is thinking of all this, Vader clenches his hand and crushes all of the glass around him, damaging the Star Destroyer he is on. Also, Vader says this:
I have a son. He will be mine. It will all be mine.
It kind of looks like all the TIE fighters around the bridge are stopped in motion too, but that could just be me. If so, that would be a pretty impressive display of the Dark Lord's force capabilities, which we're going to see a lot of that in this video. Crazy enough, because Darth Vader is pretty skilled with a lightsaber, and I guess he's a decent duelist, but he's no Dooku, and when it comes to the Force, that really is his strong suit, for sure. Now, I've been talking a bunch about these different Vader comic runs, but there's also a little bit of a fun recent one with only 5 issues called Darth Vader Dark Visions, which is similar to Star Wars Visions media, but in a more of a graphic novel form, with each taking place in a different time period, which I at least thought is pretty sick, especially with that cover art and everything. And the 5 set pieces are, in the first one, the inhabitants of the planet Cyanap are worried as a battle of their gods rages overhead, which turns out to just be a space battle between the rebels and Empire in the Galactic Civil War. Then Vader crashes his TIE fighter on the planet and actually ends up saving a young inhabitant from a beast called the Ender, while, for whatever reason, riding on a steed, or horse, unless it's the 1800s, I don't know, but I promise this one isn't a coincidence that it's as close as it is to the Tusken story. However, in Dark Visions 2, we see the Imperial Commander T-Lux aboard the Star Destroyer called the Bellicose, and they chase a rebel spy through an asteroid field, even at one point following him through an exogorth, which the Star Destroyer barely fits through, tearing it apart. Which is kind of cool. I mean, I don't know who came up with the idea of let's shove a Star Destroyer into the space slug, but whoever they are, they need to be writing more Star Wars comics. And in the third Dark Visions comic, an Imperial nurse actually falls for Vader, as was covered by Entertainment Crew in a short that they made earlier this decade. That's the reason I knew about this going into the video. Oh, and they may or may not have made a 10-minute segment in this video, which will be appearing later on, but I guess you'll have to watch till the end to see if that's true or not. Or like, 30 minutes ahead, 20 minutes ahead, I don't know. Anyway, basically in this Vader comic, a nurse peeks out behind a corner to see Lord Vader as he gets out of his Lambda class shuttle, and then accidentally bumps her cart of supplies into a door frame and falls over, slamming into the wall behind her as she was distracted by Lord Vader walking by. He, however, keeps walking on, ignoring her, and she then daydreams of a life with the Sith. She starts to convince herself that she knows Darth Vader better than his doctor, or anyone for that matter. One time, when the doctor of Vader yells at her to get out after quickly securing Vader's helmet back on his head, Vader force throws him across the room, and she takes this as Darth Vader protecting her from him. She becomes obsessed with the Sith, collecting bits and pieces of his suit that are left behind in the procedures, and even going as far as to take his cape, which is left behind once, and dancing with it, imagining Vader there, much to the Doctor's disdain, I might add. Don't worry though, because this story ends with a happy ending when she walks into his meditation chamber while he has his mask off and confesses her love for him, but Vader simply looks on without reaction and stabs her through with his lightsaber. chamber. After she falls to the floor dead, Vader contacts the bridge and commands someone to remove the body from the chamber, calling it trash. So I mean, pretty based on Vader's part. I don't know what she was really thinking, to be honest, and I don't know what the writer was thinking. But he was cooking when he made this story, I'm gonna be honest, so definitely let that guy cook. And for a brief recap of Darth Vader Dark Visions number 4 and number 5, in 4, we learn about a young rebel pilot growing up and joining the Alliance Navy after his father is shot by stormtroopers on Coruscant. But in this story, Vader hunts down and kills a whole group of rebel pilots in X-Wings and kills all of them, including this young man who fails to take a shot at Vader and goes back to base before being followed and blown up there. In Dark Visions 5, however, Vader is chasing down a local bartender from the cantina who has intel he needs. The bartender falls in an Anxieth plant, which is a hallucinogen and causes hallucinations, including the house he finds refuge in looking like Darth Vader's helmet, leading to an interesting chase. But of course, Lord Vader gets his intel as you would expect. So most of these are pretty much people making Darth Vader kind of angry, and then he ends up killing them brutally, as is the case with him usually. Next up, I want to go over the 501st Legion of clones and later stormtroopers under Darth Vader, and I'll be reading directly from the Wikipedia article on this one to save time on the video and to get it out there, period. So after the Battle of Kashyyyk, which in Legends at least had the 501st in it, a detachment of the 501st was transferred to Utapau to assist General Obi-Wan Kenobi in the 212th Attack Battalion in the capturing of General Grievous, who was currently holed up on the sinkhole-filled planet. Being dropped near the CIS-controlled Hangar 10, the 501st were tasked with assaulting and capturing a 2-story building that the CIS were using as an outpost, wanting to use it as a lookout point for their mission. Once this was accomplished, the 501st were ordered to capture an enemy position further down the highway, destroying any enemies they encountered. After taking control of the area, Obi-Wan arrived to assist the 501st in taking over Hangar 10. After clearing out the hangar, Obi-Wan and the 501st were confronted by Grievous, who proceeded to attack them and the Jedi Master. It was not long after that General Obi-Wan Kenobi was ultimately able to kill the Confederacy's Supreme Commander Grievous, something with which the 501st would have normally celebrated, although their next orders put a hold on these thoughts. As the battle was winding down, a group of clones from the 501st was discreetly transferred back to Coruscant in preparation for Order 66, a top-secret order given by Chancellor Palpatine, which stated that the Jedi had rebelled against the Republic and needed elimination. On Coruscant, the 501st rendezvoused with the Sith Lord Darth Vader, formerly known as Anakin Skywalker, and were given their orders: destroy the Jedi. Though they appreciated the Jedi, their loyalty lay first with Palpatine, as all clone troopers had been taught to obey the Supreme Chancellor first and foremost. Vader led them into the Jedi Temple, ready for battle. Though some may have held quiet doubts about what they were commanded to do, years of psychological programming and conditioning prevented any of them from resisting such an extreme order, and so they said nothing. With their inability to resist morally questionable orders, the 501st Legion steadily marched behind Darth Vader and towards the main entrance of the Jedi Temple. Then they carried out Order 66 by attacking every Jedi in their path, from Masters and Knights to Padawans and Younglings. The Legion was initially met with armed resistance from the Jedi Temple security force, who remained loyal to the Jedi and tried to assist them in preventing the 501st from capturing the Jedi Council chamber, but were ultimately overrun and killed by the elite clone troopers. And after the 501st purges the Jedi Temple with orders to spare no one, later on, shortly after Order 66 and the formation of the Galactic Empire, the Grand Army of the Republic was absorbed into the Stormtrooper Corps, given new armor and new weapons. After the Camino Uprising, since I forgot to explain what the Camino Uprising is, I'll let Vader's Fortress explain it now.
In Legends, a similar uprising took place on the planet of Kamino. After being subjugated by the Empire, the Kaminoans began an ambitious project to shake off Imperial rule by creating an army of elite clones known as anti-troopers. It is unknown whether the Kaminoans simply wanted to become independent or whether they wished to one day challenge the Empire as a military power. Regardless of their objective, it was an abysmal failure. The entire anti-trooper army and their leaders were wiped out by the 501st in just one battle on Kamino, thanks to Boba Fett's intricate knowledge of Tipoca City.
After the Kamino uprising, the 501st became the last remnant of the Grand Army of the Republic, fully composed of Jango Fett clones. In the ever-growing and diversifying army, the Fett clones were becoming a minority, with the inclusion of pools of clones from different templates, while others were birth-born recruits from Imperial academies, like kind of what we see in Rebels. So, yeah. By 0BBY though, Lord Vader was known to comb through the ranks of all Stormtrooper units and transferring the very best to the 501st, a fact that angered other Imperial figures like the Emperor's Hand, Mara Jade, who had to work with lesser qualified units. And you can tell this is a Legends article based off of that from Wikipedia. Under the supervision of Supreme Commander Darth Vader, the Legion fought in a number of battles during the Galactic Civil War, such as the Battle of Yavin, which is why these stormtroopers are aiming so well in this scene. In an effort to defeat the Rebel Alliance and bring peace to the galaxy. However, the Alliance ultimately triumphed and the 501st was disbanded after the Battle of Endor. Okay, over to you, Shad.
We witnessed the creation of Vader in the aftermath of his defeat and Padme's death. But what were his thoughts? You killed her. You killed her because finally, when you could have saved her, when you could have gone away with her, when you could have been thinking about her, you were thinking about yourself. It is in this blazing moment that you finally understand the trap of the dark side, the final cruelty of the Sith. Because now, yourself is all you will ever have, and you rage and scream and reach through the Force to crush the shadow who has destroyed you. But you are far less now than what you were. You are more than half machine. You are like a painter gone blind, a composer gone deaf. You can remember where the power was, but the power you can touch is only a memory. And so with all your world-destroying fury, it is only droids around you that implode, and equipment, and the table on which you were strapped shatters. And in the end, you cannot touch the shadow. In the end, you don't even want to. In the end, the shadow is all you have left. Because the shadow understands you. The shadow forgives you. The shadow gathers you onto itself, and within your furnace heart, you burn in your own flame. This is how it feels like to be Anakin Skywalker. Forever. Anakin, in his burning desire to save his beloved, became the catalyst to the destruction of everything he held dear. In the intensity of his love, he clung to her like a lifeline, not realizing that the tighter he held on, the more she slipped through his fingers. Some wonder how Anakin could possibly serve a man who had ripped his entire life ahead of him. The fact of the matter is, all he had left was him, the shadow. His ambitions, his hopes, and his desires all faded into oblivion. And so he became what Sidious wanted him to become, a monster. He yearned for greater power, not for himself, but for the only thing he cared for, Padme. He would faithfully serve his master like a slave until the day he was powerful enough to reverse his greatest mistake. One fateful day he would visit her tomb and come across the Jaipur snippet. Despite all Vader had done, Padme held onto it till her last breath, holding it across her chest, the last piece of what was once Anakin Skywalker. While Vader would hold on to his undying love for her, grasping for ways to bring her back.
Padme.
Something wonderful has happened. Annie, I'm pregnant.
Our next area of Vader's secrets to cover is the question of how he didn't recognize his own protocol droid sitting right there in The Empire Strikes Back, and the answer is that, well, he did. In the comic Star Wars Tales 6 from Star Wars Tales Volume 2, which is considered Legends, not canon, and was released in 2000, so 1 year after The Phantom Menace. You'll see why I mention that in a second. We see basically the whole Bespin sequence, at least the beginning of it, from Darth Vader's perspective. Vader and Boba Fett are informed that the Millennium Falcon has landed on Platform 327 to meet with Baron Administrator Lando Calrissian, and then Lord Vader tells his stormtroopers to stay out of sight, and he will take charge of the capture. He is also informed by the lieutenant, though, that the droid C-3PO fell behind and ran into Gamma Squad, who blasted him to bits. The Sith warns this Imperial lieutenant to not fail him again, and then orders C-3PO to be brought up to him as he might have valuable information. Boba talks to Vader about if the friends of Luke Skywalker were in danger, and word was to spread that the Jedi might come there faster, but Vader says it's unnecessary as he knows through the Force, which is proven by Luke on Dagobah in the movie. Empire is such a good movie, dude. Like, most people in my generation tend to say Return of the Jedi is the best of the original trilogy, but like, I'm gonna have to disagree with y'all, because Empire is better. When the lieutenant returns C-3PO's parts, he says that by the way they shattered, they must have been made a long time ago, which is kind of funny how this random lieutenant over here just roasted Anakin like that, and Vader didn't even really care that much. What do you mean? He's basically just saying your creating skills are so bad that you must have been from like 100 years ago. Pretty cool on his part, but Vader flashes back to when he was 9 and him and Kitster, Chen, Connie, Benai discovered the head and framework of a droid in one of the many junkyards of Tatooine. Anakin smuggles it home and must think about what it would be good for around the house when he realizes that it is a protocol droid. Also, the balanced gyro of this model dates back several decades at the time, which makes Anakin question how it ended up in this condition and also slightly alleviates the pressure of the lieutenant's comments earlier. Not that it really matters for Vader anyway. The lieutenant also asks if they should attempt to recover the memory unit, but Vader orders to have it destroyed. The next day, Vader captures Han, Leia, Chewie, and the others, like we see, but then hears that C-3PO's parts have been found in Leia's room. When he goes there, he has another flashback with basically a "with great power comes great responsibility" line from Shmi over here, where she tells him he can only keep the protocol droid and look after him if Anakin is responsible with it. Going back to the present, the lieutenant asks Vader if the technicians should examine it or if the Ugnaughts should rather dismantle the piece, but Vader sort of stares off into the void before giving his answer a few moments later, showing a rare moment of reflection from him, and then touches the head of C-3PO to his own helmet. He then notes to give Chewbacca the junk he deserves, and then goes to have a little appointment with Han Solo, that being his torturing of him. And on the flip side of this, I mean, why C-3PO doesn't recognize him? It's because if you remember that scene from Revenge of the Sith, towards the very end, we hear Bail Organa give the command to have 3PO's memory wiped, which at least explains that part of it, and still doesn't explain Obi-Wan's moment here in A New Hope, where he's like, I don't recall there being a droid. I don't know. Also, by the way, that line about Bail Organa and 3PO, isn't that like the last line in Revenge of the Sith? Again, reading directly from Wikipedia, we have some of Vader's different Legends apprentices. First off, worth mentioning is Starkiller, and his real name is Galen Merrick, and he was a human male Force sensitive who served as the personal assassin of the Sith Lord Darth Vader, who trained Starkiller as his secret apprentice, but came to the light side shortly before his death. Merrick was the son of 2 Jedi Knights, Kinto and Mali Merrick, born on the Wookiee homeworld of Kashyyyk in the aftermath of the Clone Wars. Following his mother's death, Kashyyyk was invaded by the Galactic Empire as a target of the Great Jedi Purge. Kento was confronted and slain in a lightsaber duel by the Dark Lord of the Sith, who discovered the fugitive Jedi's son in the process. Gauging the orphan's raw strength in the Force, Vader abducted and ultimately raised Merrick, who became Starkiller to embrace the dark side of the Force. The secret apprentice completed his missions for Vader against the knowledge of Palpatine, prevailing against his more experienced targets, only to be betrayed by his master after the Emperor confronted them. Stunned by this turn of events, Starkiller nevertheless remained loyal to Vader and began forming a rebellion against the reign of the Galactic Empire as part of his master's plan to depose Sidious. The mission was another ruse, however. After the apprentice convinced Bail, Prestor Organa, Garm, Bel, Iblis, and Mon Mothma to join him, Vader had the senators arrested and left Merrick for dead, betraying him once more, revealing he was but a tool in a plot by Sidious and Vader to crush the rebellion before it even began. However, he lived. Resolving to rescue his allies, he managed to infiltrate the Death Star before the Emperor could execute them. Although he was killed in the ensuing battle aboard the battle station, the senators were able to escape with the help of Merrick's companions, Proxy and Juno Eclipse. As a result of the apprentice's actions, the Alliance to Restore the Republic was formed, uniting malcontents across the galaxy under the symbol of Merrick's family. He had remarkable force powers and utilized the Form 5 Xian lightsaber form, also known as Jim So, similar to Anakin and Darth Vader, which is a cool fact about Darth Vader actually, because I guess this video is about him, turns out. But with Darth Vader, I mean, you might have assumed that Anakin had Form 5, and then once he became a Sith, it went to Form 7, as is the case with most Sith. But with Vader, he actually stuck with Form 5, and it kind of makes sense because I feel like Vader definitely has a very unique lightsaber form. But it definitely is worth noting that not all Sith have Form 7. I mean, if you look at it, Dooku has Form 2, Vader has Form 5. It's pretty diversified between them as well, I suppose. And also to clarify this for some people, whenever you see those clips of Starkiller fighting and killing random Star Wars main characters like Han Solo, no, that's not actually in the game The Force Unleashed. It's just a DLC made for you to see him show the plot armor who's boss. Don't worry, I am going to be playing The Force Unleashed. It is added to the list of all these gameplay videos, and I'm very sorry that I've only done like one in the last month. Actually, like I didn't think it was going to do that well, and I was really hoping it would do well because it's such a good video idea. And then it did well, and instead of capitalizing off of it and doing a series, I've kind of just not touched it for a month, so that's my fault, but I'll get to that. Also, I hope you guys like the setup. I haven't really shown it too much. I'll probably show it in a future video, but we got the blue LED lights. Also, behind me, we got the leaderboard over here. There you go. There you go. Okay, so hopefully you saw it for a second. Yeah, it didn't quite work out too well, but the thing is, you have to charge it, so you might see that in future videos. But yeah, we got a good setup going on. Got the gaming chair here, mic. It's kind of cool when you get to see what I look at the whole time when I'm recording videos. And that's not true. I mean, it used to be I was on the other side of this room with like just the mic and no isolation shield, no computer, no setup. So it's definitely evolved quite a good bit, and it's been cool. So thank you, God. Amen. And yes, The Force Unleashed is on the list for the mini games I want to play in that series. By the way, we have another one of those coming out. Also, another apprentice is Lumaya, who was born Shira Elon Kola Bree, and they were a Force-sensitive human female who went from being an agent of the Galactic Empire to Dark Lady of the Sith. Born on an Imperial center during the height of Galactic Emperor Palpatine's reign over the majority of the galaxy, Bree dedicated herself to the tenets of the Imperial New Order doctrine. This garnered the interest of Palpatine's chief enforcer, the Sith Lord Darth Vader, who sped the young woman's advancements in various Imperial-sponsored programs, including her enrollment into the Intelligence Academy of Karida. After she graduated with top honors and was promoted to the rank of Major by Vader himself, Bree was given a highly classified mission to infiltrate the Rebel Alliance and either cause the death or ostracism of Rebel hero and Jedi Luke Skywalker. Bree achieved the latter, but the events that ended in Skywalker's disgrace also left her horribly disfigured and near death. She was recovered by Darth Vader, who rehabilitated her with his cybernetic replacements, much like his own, and Bree then began to train in the dark side of the Force at the feet of Vader under the assumed identity of Lumaya, Dark Lady of the Sith. While Lumaya studied in secret as Lord Vader's shadow hand, she also served as one of the Emperor's hands, Force-trained assassins who answered to Palpatine himself. She embarked on a pilgrimage to the world of Ziost, during which she crafted her own light whip. Just talked about light whips in the last video. While on that sojourn, however, both Palpatine and Darth Vader perished in the battle at Endor, and as the foremost of their pupils, despite her incomplete training, she defaulted to Mistress of the Sith. Purpose-driven toward vengeance against Luke Skywalker and the Alliance for the deaths of her Sith masters, she apprenticed an ex-stormtrooper named Flint and lent support to the extra-galactic Nagai species war against their mortal Toph enemies. The Sith Lady suffered a critical defeat early in her campaign, the damage from which required replacement of her armor, and saw the debut of a triangular headdress that, along with her light whip, henceforth became her trademark. She continued to aid the Nagai, during which time she confronted and ultimately lost to her sworn enemy, Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. As the Nagai Toph War commenced, however, the Dark Lord escaped Skywalker's custody with promises of mayhem for him when they next met. She subsequently ended her partnership in favor of the Toph opposition, but their swift defeat by the unified forces of the Alliance, Empire, and Nagai signified the end of the war. Thought by the majority of the galaxy to be dead, Lumaya retreated to the Outer Rim with retribution ever on her mind as she went. While in hiding, the Dark Lady prepared a fleet in preparation for a strike against the New Republic, the successor government to the Rebel Alliance. And a fun fact about Lumaya is that one of her many apprentices was a former royal guardsman by the name of Karnor Jax. And yeah, it turns out I would love to talk more about the royal guards in this video, or any other video, but hey, I did a video all about the royal guards and how their armor evolved back in April, so go check that one out because I talk all about them there, and they're pretty cool, to be honest. Now I wanted to touch on every time Vader went up against his master Darth Sidious, because I feel like for those of us who are more well versed in the comic world and deep lore side of Star Wars, we're probably getting pretty used to seeing these two getting mad at each other at this point, and every time the writers act like it's this cool thing that hasn't happened before, but then there it is, thrown in here and thrown in there like we won't notice. I'm not even gonna act like I know too much about the comics, because even watching this video feels like I'm really getting back into Star Wars again or something. So in between the filmmaking and the YouTube channel, the actual Star Wars side of that, which ties into both of those for me personally, has kind of gotten lost. The first notable time that these two characters fight, that being Vader and Sidious, is when apparently Vader tried to force choke Palpatine when he got really mad at him after learning of Padme's death. You can probably guess how this turned out, and yes, after Vader throws Palpatine into the wall with the Force, Darth Sidious gets up and electrocutes Vader with his Force lightning, which, remember, due to his mechanical and specially designed suit, is even more painful of a torture method for Vader. He commands Vader to defend himself with his lightsaber, but Vader replies, saying that it was taken away from him. Then Sidious lets Vader know that if he touches him with the Force again, he will be ended, and the Emperor will finish what Obi-Wan Kenobi started. This isn't the only time that Palpatine would punish Vader with Force lightning or other methods for his insolence. One such case is when, after hearing of Vader's failure to capture Luke in Carbonite, he lights his apprentice up with tendrils of this same type of Force lightning, and also has his royal guards attack him as well. But since we're focusing on the fights, There was also another one in the 2020 Vader comic run, which shows the two sparring at the Works on Coruscant, so I suppose not technically a fight per se, and they trade some blows with obviously fast speed, well, fast for Vader that is, and as you would expect from Sith of their stature, before Sidious grabs Darth Vader's lightsaber and Force pushes him back before standing over him with two blades and reinforcing the idea into Vader's head, which he speaks here that the lightsaber is meaningless and merely one weapon to be used by the Sith, whereas the dark side touches everything, and he proves his point by throwing a piece of the ground at Vader, which sends him flying back, and he then stands up with his blade to the neck of his apprentice, Lord Vader. Also in a different comic, Darth Vader Volume 2, Edition number 5, we see a vision after Vader tries to corrupt a crystal, which shows him going into Palpatine's office with a green lightsaber, which Palpatine responds to with, "Ah, so you have made your decision." And Vader agrees with Palpatine that he has chosen weakness and that it is such a waste, emphasis on the such a waste part after he guts Sidious over the floor after a brief lightsaber fight where the Emperor even pulls out his signature spinning move. The last scuffle worth mentioning is from the Legends Dark Horse run titled Darth Vader and the Ninth Assassin, where Vader, summoned by Palpatine, unexpectedly Force pushes the Emperor out of his throne and then also pushes the throne out the window, which explodes as it had a bomb planted in it, meant as an assassination attempt on the Emperor's life. The explosion greatly damaged the office even from being outside, and he then executed multiple of the royal guards for failing to protect Palpatine before they all discovered that the Hind Snake cult was behind the attempt, who would later offer to help Vader overthrow Palpatine, but he declined and instead killed all the members of the cult. Also earlier, Vader had Force choked Mas Amida along with two of the guards, although not killing him, and the reason I even included this bit here is because we get to see Vader have the ability to just throw Sidious from his throne at any point in time, which I feel like that is kind of cool and unexpected. And also props to the Stupendous Wave and their quick video on like the 3 times Vader and Sidious fought, because that definitely helped me a little bit. Although admittedly, after doing this, he wouldn't have anywhere to go before being pulverized by Big P.
Do it.
Also, there's the time when, of course, Vader actually fought back against Palpatine for real and picked him up to be thrown down the reactor shaft into the second Death Star reactor, blowing Palpatine up and killing his master, but that one isn't all that important anyway. But there's actually a few behind the scenes details for Vader I wanted to go over real quick. One is how he was actually inspired and based off of more of a samurai type of figure, and going from an article on naiponrama.com by Michael De Silva Paternoster, Darth Vader is one of the most outstanding characters of the cinema. The real central figure of the Star Wars saga is actually inspired by the warriors of feudal Japan, and especially by a warlord of this period, Dati Masamune. Dati Masamune's helmet is famous in Japan as its crescent moon-shaped central ornament, the Madate. Could be saying that wrong, sorry about that. Distinguished it from other samurai's hard hats. Strangely, this device is not included in the Darth Vader design, while it is one of the elements that have forged the legend of this warlord from Tohoku. Despite its mild Western inspiration, this Japanese kabuto is part of an helmet style that mushroomed during the Azukai Momoyama period. Again, might have said that wrong. The Kawari Kabuto, or strangely shaped helmets. Indeed, in the late 16th century, the Japanese blacksmiths had to be very innovative to achieve exuberant helmets for their lords, who used them in order to be recognized on the battlefield, but also to show their power and wealth. This is also really cool when you remember all of the Japanese influence on the film Star Wars, especially with Seven Samurai and director Akira Kurosawa. And I should definitely check that movie out. as it was very important and influential on Star Wars, and it was very influential on filmmaking in general, so it'd be definitely a great one to check out. Also, the reviews are incredible for that one, so yeah. Well, I don't know, it just seems like a good idea. So remember when Vader said he'd save his wife with the dark side? Well, we all know how that turned out, but what if I told you he got a second chance while exploring the castle on Mustafar that we would later see in Rogue One? So today I'll be explaining the 4th volume of the 2017 Vader comic run titled Fortress Vader, going over all the crazy moments like when Vader's spirit left his body and he killed all the Jedi with ease. In the first comic of the volume, Darth Vader and the Inquisitors confront the Jedi Master Eth Koth, whose daughter was just born moments earlier. Vader fights and kills Koth, while the Inquisitors track down the surely Force-sensitive child and take it back to Vader, and they then give the baby off to the nursemaids at the works. Then, the Grand Inquisitor and Vader discuss surviving Jedi like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Oppo Rancisis and how they should continue Project Harvester, which Darth Vader thinks about while taking a bath and then dueling a training droid. In the next comic, that being 20 out of 25, Vader fights and kills 2 of the Inquisitors who had helped on the previous mission to kill the Jedi. The Sith had reason to believe that the 13th sister was traitorous and she was corrupting the other, so after stabbing their own 2 blades between each other, Vader reports to Palpatine, who is angry at Vader for the destruction on Coruscant his pursuit of the Inquisitors caused.
I have brought peace, justice, and security to my new empire.
The Emperor realizes Vader needs his own planet to hone his rage, so he offers Naboo or Tatooine, but Vader refuses and instead suggests Mustafar. And I mean, I get he's a Sith and all, so he has to go somewhere that causes pain, but did he really have to pick Mustafar, man? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's the best planet in Star Wars. I just feel like the air conditioning bills will be pretty high in that place. But Sidious also gifts Vader the Mask of Momin, who was an unusual Sith that preferred to create life. And he tells Vader that the mask told him Momin's story and that he should take it to Mustafar with him. But Darth Vader also believes that Mustafar has a locus that has deep connections to the dark side of the Force, which Palpatine sees as an opportunity for Vader to possibly revive Padme and also become a perfect Sith. Meanwhile, Colonel Bryn will accompany Vader to design his fortress, and when they arrive, another Imperial with them is possessed by the mask and shoots Bryn, but not before designing their own version of Vader's castle. And after bringing the helmet to a dark side shrine, Vader adorns it and the mask identifies itself as Darth Momin before he recalls his story of being an artistic child, being recruited under Lady Shaw, and later trying to create a shrine to the dark side using the Force to make a planet constantly destroying itself. Also, Darth Momin tells Vader that Mustafar wasn't a lava planet once, so I'm not exactly sure if this is referring to Mustafar being kind of like a planet with plants and trees being green. I'm not exactly sure, but you'd have to look into that more. Darth Vader, however, throws the mask away, discarding it, but after giving the mask a new host of an ambushed Mustafarian and returning to a cave nearby, Darth Momin tells Vader that his fortress will be the key to the dark side by turning the energies of the Locust to pierce the veil of time and see Padme again. Vader threatens Lord Momin not to lie, and they then continue on. I'll briefly cover the next few pieces of the comic, that being 23 through 24, before spending the remainder of the video on 25, the last issue, where the real fun begins.
This is where
Darth Momin and Vader make mini designs for the castle, and with the 5th version, the two attempt to open the door to the dark side, which causes the ground to shake and another endfire storm to start, which in turn makes the Mustafarian use his own Force powers to hold off the door. Then he arranges for the clans of Mustafar to destroy the operations of Vader. Later, by the 9th design, the two Sith have a working portal, and as Vader is ready to step through, he is alerted that the fleas and Mustafarians that have been attacking the base regularly are now all converging on it, and before they even can retreat, he is distracted by Darth Momin, who betrays Vader by opening the door himself himself, which gives him back his physical form. He then tells Vader that he is his own masterpiece while retrieving his mask from the former host. After being blasted from the meditation chamber where the door was, Vader is thrown away with Force energy. Then he has a huge epic battle with the Mustafarians that would better suit a separate video. That is, unless you want me to spend another 3 minutes talking about fleas, yes, fleas, and how Vader survives that and lava. I mean, come on, that's nothing new for him at this point. Then Vader duels with Lord Momin, killing him by crushing him under a huge panel and breaking the ancient Sith's neck. Afterwards, he opens the door himself, which supposedly leads to Padme, creating a massive energy burst. Moving into Vader 25, as he's walking through the door, he has an out-of-body experience as Vader's spirit disconnects and goes into a spiritual wasteland. In here, he encounters his pregnant mother Shmi and also Palpatine, who it is implied has meddled with the conceiving through the Force, all of which are a part of Force visions Vader is now facing. He then goes into a childhood dream of Anakin Skywalker, in which he is haunted by the shadow of Vader trying to grab him. Then the boy wakes up from the dream and Shmi lets him know that it's just that, a dream. And this spiritual version of Vader, as we can see, is kind of scarred and dark in the middle to kind of symbolize the part of Vader that remains. Then the rest of him is kind of blue and light, almost suggesting that his true form is kind of like a Force ghost of Anakin Skywalker, which is beyond him at this point. As Vader is walking down the spiritual plane, he comes across doorways into his past, like from his childhood, pod racing, building C-3PO, and meeting Padme, and also later memories like Obi-Wan, Palpatine, and Ahsoka. Above all else, he sees his romance with Padme, who has been on his mind for most of this story. And in the future, as is the case with Anakin and Vader, he is shown his future duel with Ahsoka on Malachor and Rebels, and next up, he comes across the Jedi Temple in this land within and around his spirit, which shows him many different Jedi that he kills with 2 lightsabers, like Mace Windu, Plo Koon, Yoda, Eth Koth, Yral Poof, and even more than that. And when Vader goes into the temple, he finds Obi-Wan and Sidious fighting. The Emperor in this vision kills Obi-Wan, but Dark Dimension Vader responds by destroying the Elder Sith with Force lightning. So we can see that while he hated Obi-Wan, he also had some hate for Sidious as well in the back of his mind. And then changing into Anakin, he walks up to a balcony with Padme on it, where he tells her that they have to go. She repeats Anakin's line as a child, asking if he's an angel, and then informing Anakin that they are the most beautiful creatures in the galaxy. Then when Anakin again insists that they have to go, Padme says that Anakin can't know her because he is dead. Then she falls to her death off the balcony, being torn apart by dark side Force energy. After this traumatic experience, Vader looks around at the bodies surrounding the temple and he screams in rage and grief. But then at the last second, he experiences a vision of a figure approaching who, as it turns out, will later be his son, Luke Skywalker. But then, after being hit with a wave of Force energy, Vader wakes up at the base of the door. Then he force pulls his lightsaber to him and plunges it into the mound, which causes dark side lightning all over the Mustafar landscape, surely making the Mustafarians even more mad than they were before at Vader. So yeah, basically, after Lord Momin tried to kind of go into the past with his mask and everything, Vader would end up killing him, and then he would go there himself, which turned out to just be all these visions and stuff. But he did actually go up to Padme, and that's, about as close as he's gonna get, it seems. After all this, Darth Vader contacts Sidious, who is pleased that Vader has survived his test, as he was considering getting a new Sith apprentice to replace the weakness of Vader. Then Palpatine asks Vader if he found the truth he was looking for, and Vader responds by turning off the holo projector, because let's be honest, if he didn't come back with Padme or something like that, he wasn't going to be too happy in the first place. Now, there are actually a few other times that Vader kind of interacts with Padme in this sort of time period after Revenge of the Sith, when we, really haven't explored it too much other than in the comics and all that good stuff. But one of those examples is in the game Vader Immortal, when there apparently is a time when you actually get to try and revive Padme until the player sort of interrupts this. Also, there is another comic from 2019 which showed Vader actually seeing Padme in the flesh, but turned out to just be a sort of phony and one of her handmaidens from earlier. And yeah, like I said, let me know if you want to see a video like this where I go over that battle with the Mustafarians and Vader. I mean, literally, he was surrounded just by all of these armies of these Mustafarians and the lava fleas and stuff, and he literally, after they send lava over the whole place, he has to use an AT-AT head to basically surf on lava. I mean, it's crazy stuff. So I do really like this comic run, and it was definitely fun to talk about it. Next up from the 2004 changes, one was the eyebrows of Sebastian Shaw, who in the original film is seen with his actual bushy dark brow, but this is removed here to keep continuity with Revenge of the Sith, where he is burned, including all of Anakin's hair. And since this was released in 2004, it's almost like George was trying to tease the Mustafar scene in this movie to the fans that actually cared and weren't losers, but also here Anakin was given blue eyes to keep with Hayden's own blue eyes from the prequels. In 2019, it looks like they might have met somewhere in the middle with some very faint brows, but I guess it just depends on how accurate the science would be, and I would assume that goes to 2004 as Vader has no hair on his head anyway.
But first, he needed to finally end the scourge that is the boy, Skywalker. Setting up his comm recorder, he began to speak. After leaving Dagobah, he set his course to Coruscant. Vader's footsteps echoed far before he reached the entrance to the chambers. Windu ignited his saber as the thudding steps stopped, and Vader stopped at the approach.
You are foolish to have come here. Your arrogance will be your downfall.
The two formidable warriors clashed as Windu started out on the offense using his signature Vapad style. And with a twitch of a hand, purple lightning sprung from the palms of his hand. Vader shrieked as Windu channeled his pain and anger into power. Vader fell on his knees as Windu rose from the floor, staring directly at Vader's faceplate until it was too shredded away by his intense lightning. He felt Vader's life draining away until it finally did.
Also, if you look through the movies, there are multiple moments where mistakes happen with Darth Vader, most notably with the eyes of David Prowse showing up from time to time randomly. The most famous example is when he's in his TIE fighter, and you see it through his red lens clear as day, which is pretty horrifying when you come down to it, and weird how that's just in the original movie, which doesn't even feature much of Darth Vader outside of this, and yet most people have never noticed this. Okay, apparently it's only in like a split-second frame of the movie, but I'm still gonna act like it's on you guys for not noticing it. And also, when he's throwing objects at Luke, you can see an eye pretty clearly. So, I mean, this one's harder to see, but you see that like white dot there? It's like right behind the white dot. So just like, give it a good 10 seconds, I'll play some elevator music, and you should figure it out. Okay, got it, cool. And the last one to mention would have to be when you see it again in the same scene. Okay, obviously not that big of a deal at all, considering I never really saw it anyway, but it's still worth noting, and also it's pretty impressive that out of all the times those reflective big eyes are staring right in at our faces on screen, we almost never can notice the cameras looking back at us. Except here, of course, but oh well. Honestly, the eye thing doesn't even bug me or anyone else all that much, to be honest, because as it turns out, Vader is a person, and you would be able to see his eyes, so it kind of makes sense. It's not that crazy. It almost adds to it, to be honest, and you could think of it as a stylistic choice on George Lucas's part. Also, another thing worth noting about the design of Darth Vader, kind of going into this behind-the-scenes section of the video, is that he originally wasn't really supposed to be a cyborg or anything. He was actually like a Imperial general, and I think there was some Nazi influence in there as well. But getting back on track, it turns out he wasn't supposed to be a cyborg at all, and he was only supposed to use the suit and mask to like fly through space to get onto the Tantive 4 in like the opening scene. So the thing is, when Ralph McQuarrie did the concept art for this scene, and you see Darth Vader here going against the character that would later be Luke, who might have been Starkiller at the time, I'm not too sure, but he had a mask here, and George Lucas probably thought that looked sick. You know, I would think the same thing, so it's kind of crazy how much of Star Wars is because of Ralph McQuarrie. I mean, he really did envision a lot of it, to be honest, but it would be nothing without the story, so there's that. Originally, this was just going to be a mask in space, and then they saw this and made it his whole look and story based off of that, with Vader falling into a volcano, which was actually part of the story even back then. So it turns out, to finish off this video, did you know that Vader wasn't actually played by James Earl Jones, but rather voiced by him after the fact? Well, of course all of you knew that, but I bet you didn't know that James Earl Jones and David Prowse never actually met before, which is kind of wild. Until 2012, that is, but, you know, the fact that they went the whole original trilogy, whole prequel trilogy, all that time, without meeting is pretty wild. Also, David Prowse was the head of the 501st fan movement, which ties into what we were talking about earlier, and also David Prowse didn't realize his voice would be replaced when he did Darth Vader, and I think it kind of made him mad when the movie dropped. Him and George Lucas have since then had a complicated history where David even got tied into the People versus the Lucas movement, but he is sadly not with us anymore, passing away in November 2020 at the age of 85 from complications with COVID-19. However, it is pretty cool that he was actually a bodybuilder too, which makes him, as Darth Vader, very sick, and you should probably take a listen to these original audio recordings of the scenes with David Prowse's voice if you haven't.
Time.
Our ships have sighted the Millennium Falcon, Lord. But it has entered an asteroid field and we cannot risk...
Asteroids do not concern me, Admiral. I want that ship, not excuses.
Cut.
This ship carries the crest of Alderaan. Was there any of the royal family on board? Who were you carrying?
16 Tech 9. And action!
Where is the data you intercepted? What have you done with those information tapes?
We intercepted no information. This is a consular ship, didn't you see the markings? We're on a diplomatic mission.
Where are those tapes?
Only the commander knows that.
This ship carries the crest of Alderaan. Was there any of the royal family on board? Who were you carrying?
And action!
Lucas had never intended to use the on-set vocal performance of David Prowse.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
I can still hear David Prowse's accent in the Darth Vader mask, muffled, because he would do the real dialogue. He's trying to curse Carrie Fisher or something.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic...
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
It was hilarious and terrifying at the same time, because we didn't know what Darth sounded like. That was the first time we heard him. We're like, is that it? Is it going to be some Scottish guy, or what is this?
Prowse's voice would later be replaced with a more menacing performance, provided by classically trained stage and film actor James Earl Jones.
George had hired David Prowse, but he said he wanted a so-called darker voice, and not in terms of ethnic, but in terms of timbre. And the rumor is that he thought of Orson Welles, and then probably thought that Orson might be too recognizable. So what he ends up is picking a voice that was born in Mississippi, raised in Michigan, and was a stutterer. And that happened to be my voice.
I want to know what happened to the plans they sent you.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take it away.
Oh, yeah, David, I think we're good. So first off, I want to thank you for coming to AwesomeCon. How has the convention scene been for you so far?
Very pleasant, very helpful, and I mean the whole of the convention has been very, very good. Enjoyed it.
So I'm sure you've been doing conventions a lot with Star Wars as being such a prominent influence in pop culture. How long have you been doing this?
Well, when Star Wars came out in the late 70s, wasn't it? And I would say now I've been doing all conventions for the last like 10, 15 years. Yeah.
But hey, he still gave a great physical performance, which we should all be greatly thankful for. But anyway, that's it for this video. I don't know, tell me if you guys want to see more of these hour-long videos. I understand the editing definitely gets less as they go along. And if you made it this far, comment down below, because that's a pretty big achievement, and that's how I know you're one of the real ones, right? One of the real fans. That's pretty cool though, so thank you. If you stuck around this far, these types of videos come out every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've been streaming every single Saturday until a while now, where it's been kind of crazy, but we're probably going to start back up because I'm on like winter break right now, so we might get a stream this week, we might not. I'm not going to promise anything, but you'll get what you get, and that's that. You can join, but it's up to you. And yeah, I post shorts on a bunch of days now, but always Saturday. But yeah, see ya.